Today we're talking about seat heights. Seat heights in the BMW GS Adventures and the regular GS Standard. This is a low suspension here.
Hi, I'm Robert with Epic Time to Go. Hope you're having a phenomenal day. Today I am talking about seat heights. I've done research over the past few years owning a BMW GS Adventure, and I want to share with you one of the things that's really important to me is seat height. And seat height is the top of the seat to the ground when you're not sitting on the bike. So with this is a GS Adventure factory low suspension. It has a seat height of 33 inches at the top of the seat to the ground. One thing to note that's very important is if you want to switch the seat height in your BMW comes with this seat height adapter that changes the seat height in low position to high position, which adds 20 millimeters of seat height or 0.8 of an inch to your seat. So with this GS Adventure low suspension, I have it in the low seat height, and I put it in here, snap it in, put your seat on, and you can get over the bike. So when I get over the bike, this is what it looks like. So my feet are basically flat-footed at this. So one thing that's very important to note is that when you go to the BMW dealership, you want to have them turn it on. Why? When you turn it on, you actually can get some suspension travel on the bike itself. When the bike is shut off, I get nothing. It's hard as a rock. So when I turn it on, I can actually get some seat weight on here and it goes down a little bit, okay? So I can try that seating position, all right? If you do start it, once the bike is started, you can adjust the suspension. So I can go in here and I can adjust it to max. So it's going to raise the entire level of the bike up. So you can actually see my feet aren't as flat anymore, and it's going up. It goes up quite a bit. To the minimum, it will drop it down even further. So you'll be able to see how flat-footed I get once it gets down to minimum. Now I'm really flat-footed, okay? What you can do with this BMW is you can change out the seat. So this is a standard seat. You can actually change it to a factory low seat. This is my BMW 2020 GS Adventure. It is a standard size. This is the low seat. I'll show you the difference between the two, okay? With the low seat, this drops the seat height down 30 millimeters or 1.2 inches from the standard seat. To show how this works, if I put on the standard seat, right here, it's a standard seat, and I sit over it. So this is in the auto position. This is where my feet are. So it's actually, look at this, I'm on my toes. I'm 5'10". My inseam is 32 inches, and I'm on toes, okay? If I turn the bike on, which you should do at every dealership when you go check out a bike, is you need to turn it on because it engages the ESA, and now you have some movement in your shock that can actually lower the suspension if you wanted to. If I start the bike, I can adjust it from auto to maximum. So it's maximum suspension. It's going to raise the seat height. So look at this, look at my feet, how high they get off the ground. Or I can drop it to minimum, and it will lower to the minimum riding height of the bike. So this is the standard seat going from high to minimum, from max to minimum. go. That's it. So this is on the minimum with a standard seat. If you want, you can take the factory standard seat, factory standard split seat I call it, and you can change it with a low seat, okay? This drops at 1.2 inches, and you can get over the bike. And look at this, I'm like almost flat-footed here. So it went from 35 inches to 33.8 inches high. And I have it in the low setting right now, and I'm almost flat-footed. So that's consideration you can have. The one thing though, when you put a lower seat on, you now sit lower in the cockpit of your bike so that your viewing angle outside the front of the bike is actually changing. I don't like it. I don't like it. That's personally, I don't like it. Okay, seat heights explained. If you have a regular split seat, the seat height is 890 millimeters or 910 millimeters, which is 35 inches or 35.8 inches. If you don't have the split seat, but you have the low rally seat, it drops the seat height by 10 millimeters, okay, or 0.4 of an inch. So it goes to 34.65 inches or 880 millimeters. If you get a high rally seat, it will actually increase this seat height by 10 millimeters to 35.4 inches. If you get the low seat right here, which this is, it drops it by 30 millimeters or 1.2 inches to 33.8 or 34.64 inches or 860 millimeters to 880 millimeters. So that's the seating on GS Adventure. So
BMW GS Adventure 2022 with a low suspension. So I want to give you the seat heights for the low suspension model, okay? One thing to note, whether you have a low suspension or a standard suspension, the seat height is the same from the foot peg to the seat on a standard seat. The only thing that changes it if you change the seat itself, okay? Just because it's a low suspension doesn't change anything except for the ground clearance. It's 50 millimeters or approximately 2 inches less ground clearance on the low suspension versus the standard suspension. But with the low suspension model, with the standard split seat, which this is, you have 840 millimeters or 860 millimeters of the seat height, or 33 inches or 33.8 inches high. If you put a low rally seat on, it will decrease the seat height by 10 millimeters to 830 millimeters or 32.7 inches. If you get a high rally seat, it will change the seat height by 10 millimeters in height to 850 millimeters, which is 33.46 inches. If you get a low seat in this model, it will decrease the seat height by 30 millimeters to 810 millimeters or 830 millimeters to 31.8 inches or 32.7 inches. If you get a high seat option on this model, it will increase it by 20 millimeters to 860 millimeters or 880 millimeters or 33.8 inches or 34.65 inches. And what I mean by when I give you the splits is if you take that adjustment device that's included with every BMW and you flip it over, it goes from high to low seating, which is a 20 millimeter increase in the seat height. Low suspension, standard suspension. 50 millimeters of difference in ground clearance, and it lowers the bike's overall seat height by 2 inches. Unless you're going over some massively steep, angled obstacles, this ground clearance is plenty for any type of 2 tracks or dirt roads, things like that.
So if you have a standard GS, the standard GS with a split seat is 850 millimeters to 870 millimeters, or 33.5 inches to 34.3 inches. If you have a low rally seat, it decreases by 10 millimeters to 840 millimeters, or 33 inches seat height. If you get a high rally seat, it increases the seat height by 10 millimeters to 900 millimeters, or 34 inches high. If you have a low seat, it decreases by 30 millimeters, or 840 millimeters, which is 32 or 33 inches. If you get the low suspension GS, the low suspension GS does not change the distance between the foot peg and the top of the seat. The only thing it does is change the ground clearance from the bottom of the bike to the ground. With a low suspension, it decreases that ground clearance by 50 millimeters, or 2 inches. The standard split seat is 800 or 820 millimeters, 31.5 inches or 32.3 inches. The low rally seat decreases it by 10 millimeters to 790 millimeters or 31.1 inches. The high rally seat increases the seat height by 10 millimeters, or it's 32 inches high or 810 millimeters. The low seat option, which is this, will decrease the standard seat height to 770 millimeters or 790 millimeters, 30.3 inches high or 31.1 inches high. If you got the high seat in any one of the models, it increases your seat height by 20 millimeters. So please note that if you get factory low suspension, it does not change your riding position at all. It only changes the height of the seat to the ground and your ground clearance. It changes it by 50 millimeters, which is not quite 2 inches. If you're hitting the bottom of your motorcycle, you're having more problems than needed. But if you stay on 2 tracks, if you stay on dirt roads, having a low suspension bike is not a problem. So what's interesting is the low suspension GS is roughly the same. I think it's almost the same, if not the same, as a R1250 RT model as far as the seat height goes, but you have a larger ground clearance. But ground clearance is a difference. So a ground clearance is just from the bottom of the bike to the ground. How much distance do you have? I think the lowest position on the bike is the center stand right here that comes down. I think that's the very lowest point on the bottom of your bike. On the new 2023 GS models, if you order it with what's called the Enduro package. Now you get Enduro, Enduro Pro as an option to change the setting on your bike, but if there's actually an Enduro package, what the Enduro package does is it gives you the bars on the GS, it gives you off-road tires, but it also gives you what's called sport suspension, which increases the suspension or the spring by 0.8 of an inch or 20 millimeters, okay? So if you're planning on getting, if you have 32-inch inseam and you get a regular size GS, you just gotta watch out. It almost increased the seat height by 1 inch, which is pretty significant. If you're not a massive off-roader, you might say, hey, I don't wanna do that. What BMW does is they have to make a bike, one size fits all. So whether you're a 150-pound rider or you're a 300-pound rider, they have to make the same bike. Whether you have a 36-inch inseam or a 28-inch inseam, they have the same bike. So they do make a low suspension model, which decreases it by 50 millimeters or 2 inches in height, but still the spring that is in this has to withstand a lot of weight because you might ride by yourself. You might ride with your partner, your wife, or your husband. You might ride with your luggage on here, another 100 pounds of luggage on here. So you might have 450 pounds on this. 450 pounds will depress that spring, whereas if you're a 150-pound rider and you're riding alone and you don't have any other luggage on it, you might not be as flat-footed. So for me, I think, this is just my personal opinion, for me, this bike is actually too big for me, for the height. Because I really like when I'm inside a city, or if I'm in, stop and go traffic, or if I go off road and I stop, right? It's not when you're moving, it's when you stop. The maneuverability and stability, I like the low suspension model better than the higher suspension model. That's my personal preference. The only thing that changes the riding height besides the seat is if you wanted to keep the standard seat in there, I really like that standard seat feel. The way I look over in the cockpit, I really prefer that over any other seat configuration for me. The rider's weight, the weight of the passenger, if you have a passenger, and the weight of the gear is the only other ways to get that seating height lowered when you're riding. But I hope you found this enjoyable, was knowledgeable for you. When you're moving down the highway, it really doesn't matter if your feet can touch the ground, because you can't touch the ground when you're moving fast, but these bikes are phenomenal. They're nimble, they're quick, they're very comfortable when you're moving, but when you're stopped, I like a lower suspension so my feet are flat-footed, where I can back up the bike in a parking lot, or if I stop and it's uneven surface, I can control the bike, because once they start tipping, you can't stop them from falling over. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a big thumbs up, subscribe down below, and I'll catch you on the next video. Have a phenomenal day.